How are we all doing?
Not bad. It's all right in here, isn't it?
This is cool.
Yeah, man.
This is really lovely.
Yeah.
So I like the niche detail of the 4-4B.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, I like the old centre.
Yeah.
That
was a birthday present, actually. That was my dad sent that across from Australia for my 25th birthday.
Oh, nice.
So,
That's
only,
cool.
only a couple of years ago. But that was the only birthday present I ever got sent from Australia.
Right,
because
okay.
he said the posters was that aggressive, he's never doing it again.
That must cost a fortune to sell that.
Yeah.
And it's like partnered up with old Johan Mers Moto2 helmet.
Yeah, we were just saying before, I've never actually seen that lid before.
Yeah.
It's a nice design.
It's nice and simple, isn't it?
Yeah, big bold colours.
Yeah.
Things we like. I like the big bold colours on that one as well, which was done with electrical tape.
Electrical tape.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, of course it is.
Oh, God, it is, isn't it?
Yeah. I used to design on Microsoft Paint when I was about 16 and do little...
That's how we ended up with this lid.
No, I'm not even kidding. That is literally how I ended up with. Yeah, literally. No, the design on that, because the pixels were so big, obviously the big bold colours worked really well. But do you remember Grand Prix 2?
Yeah, vaguely, yeah.
I had downloaded a Grand Prix 2 editor to put the cars and the helmets into the game.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I used to muck around with car designs and helmets and stuff like that. When I first got my helmets like painted up when I was karting, I was like, oh, I can do this, and I can put it on a helmet in the game and see what it actually looks like. That's kind of why the big bold colours, A, because I like them, but B, because that was as wide as the pixels went on the...
I remember that game, it was like, he's almost like...
Yeah. Well, should we get on with it?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah,
Let's go.
Well, hello and welcome to the very first episode of Final Sector. I'm Rob Hansford. This is Ash Miller, Paul Davidson. You may have seen our names in the Pit Stop magazine if you're subscribers to the mag. I'm the editor. Ash, you are our staff writer, and Paul is our lead photographer. Lads, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It's nice to finally get this going. We've been talking about it for a while, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, far too long.
Yeah.
But it's happening.
No.
We're happy now.
Yeah.
Not many people really know about us because we've obviously, just been in print and so forth. So I thought it'd be good to kind of kick things off, let people kind of understand a bit more about us, and obviously get to know us from just seeing the names in the magazine. But Ash, we'll start with you. Like, obviously, you've been writing for us.
Oh, since day dot almost.
Near enough, yeah.
I remember seeing, I ended up starting with you guys when COVID was a thing.
Yeah.
And you had issue 1 advertised on Facebook, and obviously none of us had much to do in COVID.
True.
And the pit stop came up, and I thought, you know what, I would love to write for that. And so I dropped you a message and saying about contributors and stuff like that, and that's how we ended up kicking off. But my career as a journalist has been stop-start for the last, since I was at uni, I guess. But I ended up doing journalism at uni because I used to write at the age of 15 for National Kart magazine in Australia, and just for some experience. And one of the great things about that was obviously I was kart racing around then as well, and a lot of the people you hang out with have stories. So it was a good opportunity to tell the stories of the guys, like you were saying about the owners of the magazine. It's telling the stories of the people that you wouldn't ordinarily get to give airtime to, or people that don't think they have a story, but everybody's got a story in motorsport to get to that point. So I started writing for them and was published by them, and then I started asking the sensitive subject of payment. And I said, yeah, I will, but I'd rather you had your degree. And I thought, okay, I'll go get my degree then. So I went to uni and got my journalism degree, and then that's kind of been in the pocket ever since. But it's not my full-time gig.
Yeah, far from it.
Far from it. No, I'm a full-time racing coach now, after racing for 25 years now. Went through racing MX5s in Australia when I got out of karts. 2 national titles for that in Australia, 2 state titles for that. Started racing a Lotus in production sports sort of about 2011, and obviously, surprise, the Lotus was horrendously unreliable. We got 2 rounds into the championship and the results were falling away. I thought, I'm stagnating here. So I started to look to England. Through the help of a couple of names like Danny Buxton was one. David Brabham was another one, was been very helpful to getting me over to England. And then I raced the Clio Cup for a little bit on the touring car package, up against Jack Goff, Nick Hamilton, Luke Wright, a couple of the guys that are
Some decent peddlers.
It was a very competitive season. James Colburn, Aaron Taylor-Smith, got these guys, half the grid just about went all the way to the top.
All the way up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
crikey.
So and did fairly well, well enough for the sponsor to pay for that round, but we ran out of money after that. So, but since then, did some coaching. So yeah, started at Palmer Sport back in 2012, and I've been, I've coached for Palmer's for a long time. I now work for Silverstone, do a lot of junior coaching for guys that are coming from karts up to car racing. That's the primary focus now, is the guys that are right on that cusp of their car racing career. So junior saloon car championship, the Ginettas and the Fiestas are where my bread and butter is at the moment, and I couldn't be happier. It's so much fun working with these young guys, and it's probably a good thing they're not on one of these podcasts just yet, because they are completely unfiltered. But working with these kids is unreal. It's so much fun, and and this year started with a bang on the weekend with Junior Saloon Car Championship. There's 2 kids with Kersley Motorsport that we've been working with consistently over the last year or so, and the guy Matthew got his first couple of podiums, and the other guy Ben, he was on course for a top 6 finish before track limits. Did us dirty. But yeah, that's the main gig now, pretty much. But still find the time to come and pen for the pit stop, because it's same thing as in karting. The stories that come out of motorsport are just unreal, And being in the paddock and talking to a number of people, even these kids already at the age of 15 have a story, whether their parents used to race, or they had a grandma's left some money, or a local business has seen some promise, or they've been at the local kart track since the age of 3, and everybody's got these awesome little stories that come along, and thankful to to yourself and the magazine to be able to get these guys a voice and get their stories out there, because it doesn't matter who you cross paths with, whether it's mechanic, whether it's team owner, driver, or just a general fan that's been around for a little while. There's always a reason, and putting that into a story. Everybody's got a story. There's an awesome. My favourite word in the English language is sonder. And it is essentially the awareness that every person around you has a life as complicated and as intricate as your own.
Wow.
That is very kind
deep.
of deep.
We've gone deep straight away. Jeez.
So, but that's one of the motivations, is to know that everybody you cross paths with is living a life as intricate as your own.
Yeah,
and,
fair dues.
And putting it into riding is a pleasure.
Yeah, and as we've said before, not everyone is racing to go to F1. Everyone's got their own, as you just said, everyone's got their own reasons for racing.
Yeah.
Rick Morris being one of those we've sort of spoken about, in that, I remember when I've interviewed him before, and he's in his 80s nearly now. It's got to be roughly, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And he's raced Formula Fords his whole life.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I interviewed him, the first story came out was about the fact he raced Senna at Silverstone and beat Senna at Silverstone, and had this great wheel-to-wheel tussle and came out on top.
Yeah.
And then Senna quickly went woof.
Yeah.
But for him, it wasn't about going up to F1. He had his day job.
Yeah.
And racing was his weekend hobby. Sure. And that's the way he's lived his whole life, and that's the way he loves it. And and he's, as I say, still
still hacking
going around. And it's
but almost because of that, he's become a legend in his own niche. For that, exactly. So he's found his niche, and he's recognised as being the authority almost on Formula Ford, and everybody knows him, and he's been around for generations, and that's his, and he's happy.
And then you go the other way, and you got someone like Tommy Burton who wanted to go to F1, got there. Obviously, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And then I remember we did a story on him early on, and it was just the stories that he was telling me of when he went racing over in the States and South America and stuff, and he was telling me about in with this person who was firing shots in this bar and bits and pieces. He's ducking for cover on the tables. And it's just it's crazy. It's stuff out of Hollywood movies that you would never expect to come out of a racing driver. And it's so many people got so many different stories, and it doesn't. Obviously, you Tommy is in a very one extreme end of that spectrum. Yeah. But you've got so many different things that have happened to people and why they go racing, what's motivating them. And
Yes.
things that have worked, haven't worked.
Well, as a convenient segue, I mean, talking about Hollywood, obviously Martin Donnelly's story now being picked up as the catalyst for the F1 movie.
For the F1,
I mean, nobody deserves it more than he does.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, but that also comes back to the stories that come out of this stuff are so almost like not extreme, or sometimes extreme, but just so worth telling. That you know that Hollywood took an interest in that kind of thing. You know, motorsport is so filled with these dramatic, emotional stories that really resonate. Well, as sport in general does, but motorsport being at almost, I feel like that's the extreme end of that, where there's so much adrenaline and so much going on under the surface there that stories like Martin's, you know, are picked up by Hollywood. You know, so and it's good to see him now come back into cultural relevance. You know, and recognised for the achievements he had.
I mean, and Paul, you've come at things at a different angle as a photographer, haven't you?
Yeah.
You haven't come through a traditional route to get here.
No, so I mean, I first picked up a camera when we still used film.
Wait, when?
When we still used film.
What's film?
Yeah. So I mean, so when I was at university, not that I did a photography degree, but part of what I was doing, we had an element of it, and I've been in a dark room, you know, with the trays, with the chemicals. I thought you were going to say beaten. No. Yeah, no. Under the stairs like Harry Potter. Yeah. You know. So that anyway. So yeah. So the photography side of things, obviously, you know, having to put film in the back of a camera, and that was when. So there's a guy called Graham Watson who was a cycling photographer. I mean, I first saw him. You know, he was doing the Tour de France on the back of a bike, and I was like, I just want to do that. That's what I want to do. But it wasn't seen as a traditional avenue to be able to make money and have a career and all that sort of stuff. So I did go off and do other things and, you know, sensible, normal jobs, shall we call them. But then a little bit like yourself, you know, COVID hit, and it was the first time I'd ever made an Instagram page. And it was like, you know, does somebody else want to see the pictures I've taken? And I was like, oh, there's a couple of people that do. Awesome, you know what I mean? And that's where Rob was like, you know, I've noticed your stuff. Can we print it in a magazine? I was like, yeah, of course you can, absolutely. And I think pretty much 90% of the media centre will tell you to be able to see your images in hard print, and for it to be a physical thing is just so cool. You know, in the world of digital, to have something like that to go, look, do you know what I mean? So anyway, so our first gig together was up in Yorkshire. We were photographing a festival up there, and then our second gig was photographing at Goodwood Festival of Speed, which just you know what I mean. And thankfully, you know, I mean, the team at Goodwood are amazing, and we've continued that relationship, and I've always done at least one of their events every year since. But it was from that H24 had their car, and I got lucky. You know, Stefan Rakelmi was showing Tom Christiansen of you know, Mr. Le Mans of all people, was showing him the car, and I just got the picture through the car of them looking in, and their PR guy was like, "Can we have that?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, of course you can." And he said, "Oh, we'll pay you." And I was like, "Actually, favour for a favour?" And he was like, "Okay, what do you want?" I said, "Well, we're relatively new, you know, we're not that well known. Would you help us with accreditation for Le Mans?" And he was like, "Yeah, cool, not a problem, of course we can." And then obviously, you know, as the magazine of, you know, you driving the car and telling the story, you know, we told the story of H24, and that project's obviously still continuing. But I mean, what a way to travel the world, you know, to go to Japan, America, you know, I mean, the Middle East again, you know, there's a whole nother topic. But just the things that we've been able to do, you know, it's just, and the people. I know, it's going to sound so cliched, but that media centre does have a family vibe to it. You know, yes, when you're the new kid, it's like, who's he? What's he about? You know, you've got to kind of almost prove that you're worth being there.
Yeah.
And then when certain people put their confidence in you to trust you to take pictures of their, massive clients, you know, and I will embarrass a couple of people because they have been really good to me. You know, the likes of Drew Gibson.
Yes.
Who, you know, if you've got Tom Christiansen as Mr. Le Mans, Drew Gibson is Mr. Endurance Photography. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for that guy to put his trust in me, what a confidence booster, you know. And then, you know, you get the rivalry.
Yep.
Where were you? Where were you standing? I can't tell you that. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know,
give away the secrets.
Yeah. I first time I went to Sebring, you know, there's the classic, I think it's a willow tree that hangs down.
Yeah.
And I'd seen people panning through that, and I won't say who, but I did ask another photographer as to where it was, knowing full well that this person knew exactly where it was.
Yeah.
And they went, "Oh yeah, no, I don't know what you're on about." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Seen 4,000 of your pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I know you've stood there, but okay, no, whatever, fine. And luckily, in this great age of YouTube, Larry Chen had done a video about photographing at Sebring, and I was looking at it, and I was like, he'd said exactly where the tree was, and he'd said where the sunset shots were and all the rest of it, and I was like, do you know what? Thank God for Larry Chen.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I was like, and then when I get there, holy crap, I'm stood there, and the person that I'd asked
Was there.
walks up and stands next to me. I'm like, what the hell are you? Do you know what I mean? But
All's fair in love and war.
it's all part of the learning
Exactly.
experience, you know. So, but yeah, there we go.
And we've had some brilliant shots. Not that I always give you the credit for it, but
No,
yeah,
and you always crop them
gonna
the
say,
wrong way.
He butchers them.
You know, a lovely landscape suddenly becomes portrait, but you know.
So lads, yeah, let's move on properly then to obviously the sort of next segment. I mean, we will be going through, each episode will be going through different subjects, whether it's kind of current affairs or things that have kind of happened in the past, general stories that in the magazine, things that we're working on, because we've all got quite varied sort of backgrounds and working lives in the industry. But I mean, yeah, for this episode, we're going to start off really one of the things that have been kicking off in motorsport generally is obviously Formula One is back. We've had first couple of races, brand new regulations. Brand new regulations. It's created a lot of talking points, hasn't it? I mean, where do we start? I mean, well, let's start with the first one. Yeah. What do you think of the cars?
You see, I look at it as what does it look like? And if it looks cool, it looks cool. I must admit, regulations are regulations. So as a photographer, you're just going to take pictures of whatever's there in front of you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, you can race what you want. Do you know what I mean?
Need to be in this conversation.
They look cool. Moving on. No,
it's they look cool. You know, as long as I can take a picture of it, then fine.
As long as they're racing, it's not a problem.
Nah, do you know? I know there's the whole thing about how do they sound, and you know the size of them, and can you pass, and you know this weird thing with their batteries where they're having to coast and they're going slower on the straights because they're having to do what, and it's like, I predominantly obviously world endurance type of stuff, but you know you always get people talk about how LMP2 is like the purest endurance because it's it's the same chassis, it's the same kind of you've got two different kind of manufacturers. But then Formula One, everything's also different, and it's like I'm just like sometimes I got to admit, if you take the professional sort of photography side out of it, I just want to see, whoever it is in the car, just go race. Do you know? It's like that whole kind of rubbing is racing, and that's why I look at NASCAR and go, geez, what an entertainment, and then I look at Formula One and go, ooh, it's not quite the same, is it? But yeah, I mean, sorry to put it so bluntly, whatever they design is whatever I take a picture of. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, from a perspective of a purist, I think it's one of the
Heathen versus purist.
Yeah. Well, but I'm in the same camp though. Obviously Max has been vocal about how the onus has changed on what the racing's like, and I 100% agree. I'll stand by that opinion because people want to see racing.
Yeah.
People want to see people, the guys that have got that talent to push a car to the limits of its potential, not having to worry about this lift and coast, energy harvesting.
Well, I mean, we'll come into that in a minute because I've got quite a strong opinion on that side of it.
Here we go.
I'm glad you're sitting on that side of the table.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But the cars themselves, they look like, if you think about the last few generations of cars, they've been getting so heavy and so lethargic and fat and everything else.
I know the feeling.
And this, I've been describing Paul.
When are your new regulations?
Hey, this is the 2026 version.
But it's like, obviously, making the cars narrower, making them lighter.
Yeah.
When I saw on testing, the first thing, it was like, I know they weren't doing the time stuff, but they looked like racing cars again, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
They just looked a bit more, they looked a bit more angrier.
Alive.
They looked a little bit more, know. And then you could see the drivers struggling in testing particularly, because of how many people were like trying to catch the back end or, having just motors like this. I know part of it, people go, it's just because they're playing on the steering wheel with gadgets and stuff, trying to work out. I was like, I get that. But if you're a general viewer and you're watching it, you're watching a driver working their arse off to try and keep the thing going where it needs to go at speed. And actually it looks quite exciting from that perspective throughout testing.
Yeah.
So I was looking at the cars and you see the new liveries coming out and everything else. And I was like, actually, I quite like the look of them.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, as you say, looks and racing and everything else are different
They
things
used to say
entirely,
if it looks fast, it will be fast, didn't they?
So.
And I kind of had high expectations for the engine and the battery being 50-50, and I thought, could be going in a nice direction. I've always been the only thing for me, we've got rid of DRS. I was like, but you've replaced it with DRS. You just call it an overtake button, and now the front wing flaps as well.
So
and
it's like DRS 2.0.
It's like you haven't really achieved anything with that.
Or if you're Ferrari, you can completely rotate the back wing. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's DRS 0.2.
Yeah. I mean that does look. I mean
DRS 180.
Cool.
It's like that is that was clever because I remember sitting there thinking, Christ, is that rear wing broken?
That's what I thought when I saw it on socials. I was like, oh my God, here we go, Ferrari, they've knackered the car already. I was like, oh Christ, no, it's on purpose. Jesus.
I guess that from that perspective though, it shows that there's still space for innovation.
Which is good. Yeah. And there's, and I think there's the thing about new rules, because people are going, oh well, F1's crap because all of a sudden you've got teams can't start races. You've got like Aston Martin driving handshaking so bad that the drivers can't do a full distance. Like this is like really harming the reputation. I disagree with that element because that's what F1's about, right? It's adapt, overcome,
innovate.
It's down to you to make a car. Like just because you can't just complain about the rules. Just because you've done a crap job at working to the rule set. That's not the championship's fault. That's the team's fault, and that's why I don't really have any sympathy for like Aston Martin, for example, because they've got it wrong. They need to suck it up, work it out, and then and make improvements. And
well, this is the same thing as what happened when 97 to 98 when they went and groove tyres and narrow track cars. Obviously Williams went from being dominant for years, and then in 98 they were nowhere. And struggling for podiums. And it's exactly as you said. When the rules change, it's up to the teams to adapt to the new rule set. And regardless of what that means for the outright racing. And I know back then there was criticism about. The purists, the real drivers like Villeneuve, for instance, was so used to the slicks and wings type setup that when he ended up
he just couldn't cope with it.
He couldn't cope, exactly. And he was vocal about, I don't like the cars, they're not pure racing cars anymore. And then you get on the other end, the drivers like Schumacher, Hakkinen, Coulthard got on with it.
Happy with that. Yeah.
But the thing for me that I found really hard to watch was when they took the track at Melbourne and obviously it was at turns 9 and 10, isn't it? The fast left, right, and that is one of like on that track layout. That is one of my favourite corners because that pushes a driver to the limit of like how fast. You know, you've got to put yourself on the line and go right. Who's got the most balls? Because like, you know, if you are willing to really push that, you can carry so much speed. It go obviously out onto the curb, you know, just on the exit of that turn 10. Yes. And you can gain so much time. Whereas if, you know, if you go too far, you're off and then you're off in the gravel trying to stop yourself from going off into the barriers and, you know, or otherwise you're just far too slow. Yeah. But then to see them like, you know, to see literally Charles Leclerc come to the corner just like literally just lift his foot off the throttle like about 100 metres before the braking point and then coast it through. I was like, that really hacked me off because it was like, that is not Formula One.
Yeah.
That's not.
No, that's not what
it's about. That's Formula E.
Well, it's just not racing, is it? Like racing's about who's the fastest, and you know, and then when you're literally just lifting the gas because I need battery for the next straight.
Yeah, frustrating.
The onus on Formula One is meant to be the best drivers in the world and the limits that they push. Not the best. I mean, the best engineering, yes, but not have that as the determining factor for the performance of the cars. You know, the best drivers in the world will push the cars that they've got engineered the way they are to the limit that they've got, but that's not happening. Having to harvest, it takes that away from the driver and it's like, you know, cutting with a blunt knife.
So I'm going to be really hypocritical now though, because as much as I like was getting really angry about Melbourne and the cars being, you know, lifting off and everything else, the actual racing, and I'm going to wait for the rest of the season to see how it pans out. But on the first two races, I think if you were to be sort of a general viewer, I think the racing's been better in those two races that compared to, you know, other races last year. Because, and part of it, I wonder whether it is a learning phase and that's why it's so good, and whether it will stay like that forever. But the fact that we've had two races where the lead has been fought quite hard for, you know, in the first few laps. You look at how the Ferrari drivers were battling each other on track. You know, what really kind of was a bit frustrating in China specifically, if you're watching the leaderboard, right, from like 4th and like 8th, there was a point in the middle of the race where they were all constantly changing positions.
Oh, really? Okay.
And none of it got shown on TV. I was like, you know, Colapinto was up there with Gasly, then he was down there, then Gasly was up, and then all of a sudden, like, Max was overtaking a lot of them, and then he was back down again, and it was like, but none of it got shown on TV because the racing was so close at the front with Russell, Hamilton and Leclerc that the TV director was like, well, we need to focus on them, they're the big name. And it's like, so actually I think the racing has been better so far. And obviously China, that whole super clipping wasn't obvious really, because obviously they were coasting in the corners that they would be coasting anyway, because you know, the long corners and stuff, so you don't notice it as much. Whereas obviously Australia, it was really obvious. So I think it's going to be a circuit by circuit. So my solution would be, can you just adapt it race by race? As in the power ratio, because, you know, like if Australia, they'd gone, right, well, actually you can have like 70% power and 30% battery. You wouldn't have had that coasting through. China, 50-50 works. You know, if you've got like other tracks, you know, like I'm really concerned about like how Baku is going to be, because you think how long that straight is. Are they just have to lift off and start super clipping down that straight?
I think they will, but also on the flip side of that as well, I mean, would that solution not be something that would then fans that are watching it would then have to follow, and it'd be like, well, are they on 70-30 this race? Are they on 60-60? You know, or whatever.
Well, like, it's really hard to gauge, isn't it? And that's
So
but I don't think fans would care too much about that.
I was going to say, do fans want that?
They just want to see racing.
Well, yeah,
get on the track and get on with it. Do you know what I mean?
I was going to say something really nasty about fans, then, but I can't.
No.
But no, like from an inside perspective, you know, like the racing has been better. Granted, you know, there has been a lot of entertainment out of Formula One, which is obviously important now that there's a massive following from Drive to Survive, and the entertainment aspect has become such a critical part of the whole circus. But I can't help but feel a lot of it's in its phase where, like, as you said, it is a transitional phase where people are still figuring out what the energy recovery, you know, where that's going to actually sit in terms of how effective it's going to be for the racing. But I can't help but feel it just feels manufactured a little bit and feels a little bit artificial, because a lot of the overtaking is done because of clipping and energy deployment and stuff like that.
Yeah,
It's
there is
not-
that. That is a
You know, and obviously it's up to the driver to use that energy in
the right way.
That's another tool that they're using. You know, so it does all roll into the racecraft, and it's just a bolt-on tool that they have to use to get the racing, or get the maximum performance out of it. But the almost like the days of even pre-DRS and all that sort of stuff, where the driver had to work really hard to get the overtaking done, and it was up to the driver's pure ability to get that to happen.
Yeah, because I'm on the fence, and I've written about this before in a magazine, of like, for me, a great race doesn't always need to be an overtake.
Yeah.
Like, in the sense of my argument on it, if I enjoy it, if a driver is able to defend the position, like, as long as they can race closely.
Yes.
But if like a car's coming in and the driver ahead shuts the door on them and manages to defend it, or they lose it for half a corner and get it back and everything else, I find that just as enjoyable to watch because it's tense. If there's no nailed on overtake.
If there was one car and it's off down the track and it's like, that's it, done.
And so,
it's like
so
60
me,
laps of,
when F1 goes, we've had 400 overtakes or whatever it is, I'm like, I don't really care. Because like, I would rather watch a race where there's like one absolutely, like Schumacher and Hakkinen at Spa. Everyone remembers that overtake.
Yeah. Well, Monaco 92. Like the first thing sprung to mind was
that's the best example, yeah.
Monaco 92 is still talked about as a classic race. Donington 93 is still talked about as a classic race. Even Silverstone 93, when Senna was holding Prost off, all these battles that happened are still seen with glimmering eyes for people that watched it, and it's still referenced now, not because there was particularly overtaking, but like you said, it was tense.
No, but there was a battle.
There was drama.
I mean, Monaco, people will go, well, you couldn't overtake anyway, but that's kind of irrelevant of the point, for what we're making here, is that Mansell had fresher tyres, he had the faster car.
Yeah.
You still couldn't.
And yet Senna just put that car
exactly
and
where
you
it
never
needed to
knew,
be.
there was always this kind of like, can't he?
Yeah.
And it's that for me is just as enjoyable to watch.
Yeah.
Where you've got like drivers overtaking, and for me it's just about as long as they can drive closely.
Yeah.
And actually have a chance of making a move. I'm not overly worried about hundreds of overtakes. Yeah. So obviously we've been chatting about how sort of hacked off we are with F1 racing as it is right now. Obviously Verstappen has kind of had that same approach, hasn't he? And
he's gone and done some proper racing.
Yeah,
exactly.
well, Nurburgring 24 is now obviously officially on the list. He went and did the Nurburgring sort of NLS races last year as a GT4 to qualify to be able to do the GT3. Obviously he's just done GT3, won the race, and then got disqualified. But I mean, regardless of the disqualification, though, it's cool to see a driver going out doing something for fun, isn't it? It reminds me a bit of like Alonso when he decided, I want to go and do the Triple Crown.
Yes.
It is nice to see an F1 driver going out and doing something different.
Well, they used to do it back in the day, didn't they?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably know better than I do, but you wouldn't have a driver just staying with one.
No, one series.
Division.
Exactly. Well, even going back to the 60s, the Tasman series in between is almost like a winter series for the F1 guys. And I mean, the way I grew up in Australia, in Brisbane, Lakeside Raceway is 10 minutes away from my parents' place. Yeah. But Lakeside has this beautiful, rich history of running the Tasman series back in the 1960s. So Hill, Clark, Stewart, they all raced their F1 cars around this little circuit sort of thing. But for fun.
Yeah.
Like that, we need to bring some of that back. And like I said, it was good to see Max actually, well, not just participating, but absolutely
wanting to
rinsing these guys.
I mean, what did he do? He did one lap and put it on pole?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus.
I mean, it shows you the level of talent, really. I mean, obviously at that NLS, with all due respect to the drivers, there's some very good Nurburgring specialists in there.
Yeah.
But he's the only one in there that's obviously of a F1 sort of
pedigree
caliber. So there is, there's an argument to say, well, you shouldn't be very surprised that Verstappen's suddenly, faster than everybody else.
Yeah,
but
he's still got to turn up and do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and obviously he's got teammates. He's not driving the car on his own. So it's still part of a team effort. But it's just fun. Like, that's what I like about it. It's just he's doing this, as you say, for just pure enjoyment, and it's a box tick for him of something that he's been desperate to go and do.
Yeah. Well, he wants to do Le Mans, doesn't he?
Yeah, which I'm sure he'll do at some point.
Him and Vettel have said, yeah, we can make this happen
Yeah.
sometime.
Well, I mean, we can't forget about Hulkenberg did that, didn't he, as well? Like, he dipped away and did that sort of thing as well.
Well, he turned up to Le Mans, first time at Le Mans. Boom, there you go.
Yeah.
I'll win that, thanks.
Yeah, it's good to see that these caliber of drivers still want to go and do other things. There's a bit of train spotting fact. There's a friend of mine called Peter LeVay that does a lot of filmmaking in Austria, and he put up a little fact. You know, the last time that Gunon and Verstappen were teammates was at Simtech in '95. It was their dads.
Oh, right.
Yeah. How's that for train spotting?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's I didn't even realise that.
That's niche.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But no, it's very cool to see. Obviously, you know, like statement of intent from Max, you know, and I mean, you would have seen the amount of attention it's drawn for the NLS.
Nurburgring must be loving it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was a picture of the car and him on the grid,
And with
just
yeah.
I was like, oh, and I looked at it and went, if I was working there, how the hell am I supposed to get to the car and all the rest of it? I was like, but what a great image for like you say, the Nürburgring, for the series. I mean, a series that nobody ever really spoke about.
Yeah.
Has suddenly gone boom, global, and fair play. Absolutely fair play.
Yeah, it was kind of one of the best kept secrets of endurance racing for a little bit, wasn't it? You know, like in terms of these caliber of drivers that go out and do some of the endurance racing, even like things like British GT, you know, was on the map. You know, even like go further, Australian GT, IMSA, all that sort of stuff. Endurance. Then there's this NLS. It's just kind of just sat there going,
And
you
now
know,
the world know why for watching it on the weekend because Max Verstappen's racing it.
Yeah, you know, so it's great to see that on the map because deservedly so. It's It's the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges in motorsport, probably. You know, in terms of the physicality of the circuit and mastering it.
The green hell, is it? They call it.
Yeah, there's nothing like it on the planet. You know,
it's going to be interesting as well because for 24, you know, I mean, he might be doing another NLS race because obviously with the cancellation of the Grand Prix, with Bahrain and Saudi being cancelled, it now opens up the gap for him to do another race.
Right,
so obviously we'll wait and see if that actually happens. But I think it'd be quite fun if he did.
Yeah. I'd love to see other drivers do that. Now that there's a break, I'd love to see him go like almost like a holiday. Let's do something else. Let's go, you know, like a gap in the calendar where they go, actually, okay, you know, what else is going on? Let's go. Let's see if there's any seats in IndyCar. Well, let's go, you know what I mean? Like, we'll just,
imagine. Jesus.
You know, or something a little fun where the drivers, because it's tough to see the drivers of that caliber being a little bit jaded with the sport they fell in love with at the position that they're in, you know, to want to look elsewhere, but also we want to see these guys enjoy the fruits of their labour.
Could you imagine all doing like, you know, Citroen C1 racing at Snetterton or something, you know, Citroen C1 12 hours or whatever.
Yeah. Or even like we were talking about earlier, like Charles Rainford, you know, British touring car driver, he was doing the Ford KA enduro car a couple of years ago and stuff like that. And he was saying, in fact, there's I think it was an article going in the next edition actually about Mr. Rainford. Look out for that one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just like hashtag ad. But he was saying that the most fun he's ever had in a race was doing the enduro car stuff. You know, where they had to start from the back and he fought his way through to the front and stuff like that, which A, showcased the caliber of driver that he is, but B, he said he had the best time racing against these. You know,
so when I was freelancing, starting out, I actually did enjoyed the KA 12 hours at Snet, and Eric Boudier was racing.
Oh yes,
and it was that year. And I tell you what, like as a fan, as someone just stood on the side of the track watching it, the cars are just going so slowly down that side of the track. Like Christ, like why? Why would you put yourself through it? Like, you're barely getting to like 70, 80. You're just like chugging the thing along. But when they got like wheel to wheel, it was quite fun to watch, and the drivers were getting out and going into the garage, and they were like instantly straight to the timing board. Oh, where are we? How are we doing? Yeah. And they just had the biggest smiles on their faces. Yeah. It's like it shows you. This comes back to what we were saying earlier about the F1 stuff. It's not always about how powerful and how fast the cars are. It's just how raceable they are. You know, can you take it to its limits and beyond. Yeah. And it's like, you know, the level of ability obviously in that race is just, they were on that year as well was crazy. You got someone of Eric Boudier who was doing it just for a bit of fun. He didn't really race at a professional standard, you know, until he was running McLaren at the time.
Yeah.
So it was just
Well,
like,
that
you know,
explains everything. He was off
well,
doing
yeah,
other things.
exactly, yeah. So, but it's like, you know, someone of like that kind of level, and then you had, but it's like, you know, TCR drivers in there.
Yeah.
And like, you know, touring car drivers all coming in and
Yeah.
just going at
Having
it
a
and
go.
having a laugh. And they were just getting off the thing, absolutely having a whale of a time.
We have to imagine the technical ability to try and be a photographer and try and make a panning shot, make him look fast.
Yeah.
Like that's a level of skill right there as well.
Oh, I tell you, you give me a yellow flag when they're at, you know, slow speed. Brilliant. Much easier.
Yeah, I actually get pictures that are in focus when it's in
I
there.
tell it, yeah.
That's when you know shutter speed 110.
Yeah. I mean, it's like when you say about, you know, purists of drivers and all the rest of it. You know, a lot of photographers will go, oh, you can't really take pictures of them when they're under a, you know, safety car or, you know, full course yellow or anything like that. I'm like, stuff it. Do you know what I mean? Unless it's one of the cars that their indicators are going in, and you can blatantly tell. It's like, oh, crap.
He's
okay.
trying to time it when the indicators aren't flashing. I will have that shot.
Do you know, it might not be a pure shot, but who
knows?
Who's gonna know?
knows?
Exactly.
Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, that might be controversial, and you know, comment below if you
As I say,
disagree. Blah blah blah.
Yeah, write in on the comments.
Yeah. And there will be. I mean, there are people out there that will only, as soon as, you know, full course yellow, they go, nah, I'm not going to take a picture of that because it's full course yellow. It's not actual race action. And I'm like, do you know what? If you're creating, you know, an image, if you get the image, you get the image.
But also, as someone, obviously, when I look at things from putting stories together, sometimes, you know, if you're doing something about a particular race, you want the aspect. So you get frustrated when the photographers then just go, I'm not taking that as full course yellow, because actually it could be quite useful in terms of telling the story.
Yes.
Part of the
It's part of the race.
Yeah.
Just because they're not racing at that time in terms of like they're still on track. The race is still taking place.
Well, there's a focal point then, isn't there? If the yellow flag's right, you're taking a picture of the guys with the yellow flags. You can make a picture out of it.
Well, we had it. Was it? I can't remember which Le Mans it was. Whether it was this year or the year before. But we were under safety car in the rain at night, and it's like, you know, you could have gone, oh, I'm not taking pictures for the next 4 hours of bloody safety. But actually, it was
Prime
a big
time.
thing. Do you know what I mean? And it's like it was the expectation is that's part of the race, so that's part of the imagery that you create. You know.
It's it's part
whether
of the story.
you want to be asleep under a table in the media centre at 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, but you got to get out there. Yeah.
We went way off track there.
Yeah.
But in terms of like with Verstappen, it'll be good. And the thing is, nothing's nailed on as well. You know, you've got Nurburgring 24. You know,
and then nothing after that.
But what I mean is anything can happen in that race. Like,
I mean, it could
it's a
be out
24-hour event. Like,
first 10 minutes, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
that's 23 hours and 50 minutes wasted then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be good to see how it goes. And I think, you know, good for him of like actually going,
I want to do it. I'm going to go do it.
It's the most hotly anticipated Nurburgring 24 hours, I think, in recent memory, isn't it? Really, you know. So I mean,
it's got to be a sellout.
Oh, 100%.
You know
We
what I
even
mean?
look at people that have won. You know, there's for instance, a couple of years ago, Dave Pittard won the Nurburgring 24 hour. Firstly, in racing circles, he's well known as being a very handy peddler, lovely bloke, and it's almost like he won the Nurburgring 24 hour, and people went, yay.
Doesn't mean anything.
you know, so because it still kind of was in that niche sort of thing. So say if Verstappen does take it out, the legitimacy of the championship and that race is going to skyrocket. It'll mean more. Exactly. You know, it'll put it on the map as one of the.
And it will be interesting to see him up against the likes of, you know, your Kevin Estras and all those kind of, you know, the Porsche factory drivers.
It's also when you have a dream and there's somebody appears where they're not meant to be. You know what I mean? Like there's somebody just, you know, like, I don't know, like...
Is that a dream or a nightmare?
Depends on the people. You know?
We're entering therapy for us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm sitting in the big comfy chair. So
would you like to
your fault, guys? Yeah.
have a lay down, sir?
Quick, get the notepad out. We'll be here for a long time. But, you know, like even yeah, like that's kind of, it's nice to see these worlds colliding. That's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to get to. You know, we've got stratosphere of Formula One and these endurance legends basically that are king of their own little castle over there, and seeing one of these guys come in and fight head to head, it's almost one of these aspects of motorsport that makes it beautiful.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree.
Well, I think that's time to end our first episode.
To wrap up, excellent.
It's been great to get the first episode
Out of
done
the
and
way.
dusted.
Done,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
Oh, tea didn't get too cold either. Lovely.
yeah. and if you're still watching, thanks very much for joining us. It's great to have you along. We'll be doing this every fortnight, and as I say, every episode will be different topics. Some of it will be current affairs that we've just been chatting about, you know, with F1 and Max Verstappen. Other times it will be a bit more generic. Next episode, we will be chatting about sort of our careers and what we get up to. So yeah, if you enjoy what you see, thanks very much, and tune in next time. We'll see you soon.